Hi, this is Rob Sheen from the Source Conference, and I'm here with Josh Bressers today, who's the head of product security at Elastic. And he's going to be speaking at Source Austin on December 5th and 6th. And he's going to be actually doing a really interesting session. It's called Dungeons and Data, and it's role-playing an incident. So I've actually wanted to have some kind of a role-playing tabletop thing at Source for a long time. So I'm actually really glad that I met you earlier in the year and we talked about
Yeah.
this.
That's awesome. No, I'm super excited. It's been so much fun. I've run this a couple of times now, and it just sprung into my mind at some point that wouldn't it be cool to do tabletop exercises with like real dice and character sheets and skills and kind of the good old days I remember of, Dungeons and Dragons and countless other role-playing games. And I don't know how many tabletop events you've done in terms of security, but they're usually terrible and they're boring. I'm sorry to everyone running role-playing events, but they're quite boring, right? And I thought, what if we spiced it up and made it fun? And like I'd never done this before, and so I go into my first session I've ever done with like real humans, right? Thinking I hope this goes like my goal is just to not have people hate me when I'm done. And we had a blast. Like it was just like playing D&D with your friends, where everyone's silly and it's goofy and things don't always make sense or work out the right way, but whatever. It was so much fun. And the thing I love the most is I think I had more fun than the people I was role playing with, which was surprising, to be honest with you, because I was very concerned it would be a lot of work and not enjoyable at all. But I loved it. It was great.
Awesome. And you ran this at RSA, right?
I did. I ran it twice, actually, which terrified me as well because I'd never done it. And they said, we think this is going to be really popular, so we want you to do it twice. And I said, oh, that sounds awesome. 2 times will be really fun. And then, right before it came up, I thought, if the first one of these goes bad, maybe I could pretend I got sick or something and just not do the second one.
Right.
Because, it was kind of terrifying. Like, I'd never done this before and thought, I'm grateful they believe it will be popular. But at the same time, then it was like, oh my goodness, if it goes badly, what am I going to do? And it was, and part of the fun as well is usually you give a talk twice. I've given lots of talks twice at a conference. You give it once, you give it twice. It's basically the same thing, no big deal, whatever. And in this instance, obviously it's a role-playing event, and even what happens while we play, I've got tables that I've written out, and I roll dice as well as the, I guess, dungeon master, whatever you want to call me here. Security master, I like that. I'm using that one. Anyway,
master, there you go.
Right. But, I rolled, so I don't know what's going to happen either. And so both of these sessions were like drastically different. The only common thread that existed between the two of them is that at one point there was ransom. A ransom wanted to be paid by the attacker. And both groups tried really hard to pay the ransom. And I kept telling them, no matter what happens, I'm not going to let this work, right? Like, as the guy in charge, you are not paying this ransom. And they kept trying, though. Like, it's funny. It made me realize that there's just like certain things inherent to people, I think, that like, let's take the easy way out of this situation. And even when someone tells you can't take the easy way out, like, it didn't matter. They were still trying to do it.
So that's funny. So
Yeah.
what roles do you actually have in the game?
So, and I have 30 character sheets, which is an insane amount, I will say. And it's everything from obviously CEO, CISO, lawyers, there's engineers, we've got PR people, there's kind of up and down the spectrum of typical roles you'd expect in a company. The one I didn't have that we really need, it turned out, is like a CFO. Because people kept asking, like, again, this kind of comes back to the how can we pay the ransom? Where's the CFO? I'm like, there is no CFO. Why the heck would we have a CFO in this? And it turns out, though, that I'm going to add one prior to Source. And no, it's funny, too, because it made a lot of people step out of their kind of normal comfort zone. An example being the person who role-played the lawyer and the marketing person at the end said, this is really hard, trying to do these particular tasks for an incident, and especially the marketing people, because obviously as most of us being security practitioners who do this, we don't think about what does it mean to communicate some of this stuff. What do we need to tell people they should talk about? And my favorite one was just how the game worked. People kept leaking information to the press. And at the very end of the game, the marketing guy says, I probably should have told no one to talk to the press, shouldn't I? And I said, yeah, you probably should have, and just really crazy stuff like that. It's fantastic. But yeah, pretty much my goal is to have basically every person in the organization that would be involved in some meaningful way in a major security event.
Great. So essentially you set up a scenario where there's something just happened, and then what do people have to do? They just have to kind of act out how they would behave under the circumstances?
I mean, essentially, right. That's exactly the idea. So what I do is I've got some background that I fill you in on, and it was basically I forget the name of the company off the top of my head now, but you're this company, and I think we sold Synergy was our product, of course, and then basically I said the CEO gets this email, and it's I have your customer list, and unless you pay me $1 million Bitcoins, I'm going to release it to the public. What do you do now? And the CEO starts it, right? And it was really cool too, because I know at first people are like, oh, I want to be the CEO. By the end, they're like, this is a terrible job. Why would anybody want to do this? Which was really cool. I mean, that was really, really awesome. But then, it starts off like that. It's like, okay, CEO, what do you do now? And like, at first they're like, I don't know what I should do. I said, maybe you should call your CISO, right? And then it kind of goes from there. And then the way I did it was, normally when you kind of do a role-playing game, you have rounds and everyone gets a turn and things like that. But with 30 people, that's ridiculous, right? You can't have 30 people each taking a turn because it would take an hour just to get through all 30 of them. And so we had 5-minute rounds. Anyone could talk in any time to anyone they want about anything. And then basically every time the timer went off, I would roll the dice to see what happened next. Like there'd be some new finding or some new thing would occur, and it did get ridiculous. And I warned them this could happen because like at one point there was two Western nations, or I'm sorry, there was a Middle Eastern nation and a Western nation like attacking the DNS server. And they're like, this is ridiculous. I said, it's fine. Just keep going. Like, let's see where it goes. and that's one of the things that was one of the bits of feedback I got actually was like, let's try not to have too many completely ridiculous events. And, I mean, that's fair, right? I totally get that.
Cool. So how do you see these kinds of events, or these kinds of scenarios playing out in the future? How do you see this evolving over time?
So, I mean, I think about this a lot. It's one of those things that I'm not heavily well, I shouldn't say that. I'm relatively invested in it at this point just because I've spent an insane amount of time. By the way, it took me, I figured it'd be a couple hours to put this together. I bet I have more than 30 hours of work into this thing at this point.
I'm surprised it's not 130, man.
It might be. Maybe I'm blocking out part of it in my brain. But obviously, and I update it as I come up with ideas. And obviously before Source, I'm going to put a bunch of extra work into it to make some changes I want to see and things like that. But I mean, fundamentally, kind of the way I see this, and this is almost true of the entire security industry for the most part, is we are bad at communicating important things in a way that isn't super boring. Right. And I'll never forget, I had an old mentor many, many, many years ago that said that this stuff is too important to try to spice it up. Right. It has to be boring. And I'm thinking, no, it doesn't, because when people are bored, they don't listen, they don't pay attention, and they don't engage. Right. And so the value I kind of see here is there's a couple angles. There's the angle of just role-playing things I think is beneficial for teams because it helps build confidence. It helps kind of build camaraderie between the people in what they're doing. And it just makes you understand, what are some of our weak spots? What can we do well? What don't we do well? What's happening here? So obviously I think role-playing events, kind of tabletop, I should say, is important. That has a lot of value. But it also, it's not exciting. Right? It's not something people look forward to usually. It's like, oh, crap, we're doing our tabletop thing this week. Let's see what happens now. And the idea is like, let's make people excited about this. What if people wanted to do this, right? And it's, oh, come, come person who's brand new, or come someone from this department over here. Come join us and see what this is. And then the most important aspect of it, I think, is people understanding other perspectives. And this is where, like I said, having someone play the CEO, someone play the lawyer, someone play the marketing person, it really made them think about, what does this mean for these people that I have to interact with when I do my job, right? Because then all of a sudden, you're not the person yelling at the lawyer, you're the lawyer yelling at the security guy, so to speak. And so that's the thing I didn't expect, that I think people were most impressed by and thought was the highest value that came out of it, was just, now I understand what these people are doing when I'm talking to them. And that's awesome, right? Like I think in most situations when we're dealing with humans, like that's the dream, right? If you can get someone to understand your perspective, you automatically have a brand new connection that you can then leverage to get more done.
Yeah, I know. I love doing exercises where I get to bring people together that are maybe in different roles or different things like that, where they can get better understand each other. I do a threat modeling thing where I do that, where I bring different roles in and let
Oh,
them
nice.
understand what each other does. So I definitely appreciate that part. What kind of attendee would get value out of this? Is this for literally anybody, or is this
Yeah,
tailored to
yeah,
a specific role?
definitely. Like just show up, right? So when I've done it in the past, it was obviously RSA, so there were some pretty heavy security people there. I've done I've not officially done it with other people, but I've talked to a bunch of people with varying levels of security background and knowledge about all this. We've gone over a lot of content and everything from, salespeople on up to CISO types. And so I think I obviously from my perspective, my goal is to make this a thing literally anyone could come to. Where if my 12-year-old kid could sit down and play with us, I think that is a success.
Okay, so they don't need to have prior security knowledge.
Zero knowledge,
Okay,
right?
great.
Zero knowledge is the goal. I just want people to show up and sit down. And in fact, I'm even super flexible. If someone wants to like make up their own character type of their own job function, great. I'm all for stuff like that. In fact, I even encourage people to modify their character sheets where, change your skills, change all this, change all that, give yourself, I don't have hit points worked into this yet, but it's on the list. So we'll see if it makes it for Source.
All right, great. Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing this. I might sit in this session myself if
Awesome.
I have time. But this is definitely something I've been looking forward to, and I'm looking forward to having you at the event. And so Josh will be at Source Austin on December 5th and 6th.
Yep.
This one thing actually sounds like the thing that would be worth coming to the conference for, if nothing else. So
Awesome.
hopefully people come and check it out. So
Yeah, definitely. I'm super excited. Awesome. Thank you, Rob.
See you in Austin in a month.
Absolutely. I can't wait.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.